Paul Rich. Almost, okay, almost that fine. PhD student, he woke up very early this morning coming from Basel, but he made it, so thank you very much, Paul, for being here. And he will talk about, at the end, is everything or you cut something? Did you manage to do both parts?
Yeah, I will expect.
Okay. Reproducibility, replacement of ultrasound and high-density surface EMG using 3D navigation and real-time analysis. 8 minutes from now. Have fun.
Let's start by looking at these two images. And I want to do a quick exercise. Show of hands. Who thinks that these two images are captured from the same participant? Okay. So not too many hands raised, but those of you that did have very good eyes. They are, in fact, it's the vastus facialis, so it's the same participant, a week apart, no intervention. But to me, and I would argue it's not really the best images that I could have shown, but they make the point, they don't look too similar. And if you would analyze these images, we would get roughly a half centimeter difference in fascicle length, 2 degrees in pronation angle. And this is, and even more, what we see in the literature as the reliability. So minimal detectable change is about 1 centimeter or below, and pronation angle 2 to 5 degrees. But it would be great if that could be lower. So I want to highlight a potential solution. And when I say potential, I really mean this. This is just piloting. And I want to show you a reproducible replacement of ultrasound using 3D navigation and real-time analysis. In theory, the concept is also applicable to high-density EMG, but we have not tested this yet. So I probably don't have to tell you, but when you collect an ultrasound image, what you would usually do is apply markings to the skin, and when the participant comes for the second visit, you would do the markings again. But what if you would not have to do the markings on the second time point? What if we would use motion capture instead? So you do the markings on the participant on the muscle the first time. You use a motion capture system and a probe that is displayed here with markers. And what you then do is you apply a reference on the participant. In our case, it's this plate that has a compass to standardize rotation and a bubble level to standardize tilt. And then you would search your preferred image point. And what you would then is you would register the position of the probe and of the participant plate and keep and save their coordinates. And then you would send the participant home, and on the second visit you would do the same procedure. But obviously, in replacing the probe, you would be off. And being off means you would get a different image. And what you could do then is you could use a software that we've developed to basically get the errors from the saved initial position to the second time and calculate the translation error and the rotation error and an alignment score that is a weighted average of both. And then you can see on the right side of the screen, you would kind of try to navigate your probe in comparison to the fixed participant part to the initial reference position. And you would get the errors down, and you would be more or less in the same position. Now, this is somewhat arbitrary, so we set a threshold of being away 5 degrees and 5 millimeters, but below that, you would get quite a good of agreement. So far, we have been only able to test this in phantoms, and the procedure was as followed. So we attached the markings rigidly on the phantom here. So this was our reference. And then we marked the phantom, placed the probe, and captured the position. We then removed the probe, kept the markings, and placed the probe on again, and the alignment that you would then get will be 0.9. So it will be more than 5 millimeters away and a little less than 5 degrees of different rotation, just by removing and replacing the probe on again. If you would redo the markings, actually, so mark the phantom, register the position, remove the markings, mark again, place the probe, there will be no alignment, so the probe will be off more than 5 millimeters and more than 5 degrees. Actually, it was like 3 centimeters. But if we now apply our navigation, suddenly we would be able to move up to a almost 0.8 agreement score, so we would be below 3 millimeters and below 3 degrees, which actually is quite nice. So one thing that you might be asking yourself is, but you have to attach the participant part somewhere, and this also is due to some error. So we tested this as well, and this is kind of like the main probe that we still have here. And by keeping the probe this time fixed and just replacing the participant part on some anatomical markers, so practically we use 12 centimeters of patella apex distance, and we get an alignment of 0.62. So this already introduces some error, but at least we can account for this if we know it. But one thing that we still don't know is how structurally similar is your image standard. And this is why we developed a second software where we directly stream the ultrasound image to a UI and do some live calculations on it. So we calculate the structural similarity index, which accounts for luminescence, contrast, and spatial relations in the image. And we do some live thresholding, as is displayed here. And then we can try to navigate the probe just by looking at the score and looking at the image to go in the exact same position as before. To be fair, we did not combine this yet with the optical markers. So it's just a similarity. But what we are able to get is a 0.3, so 1 would be very high similarity, 0 is no similarity, just by looking at the phantom images here. And if we do this in muscle, the similarity is about 0.2. So I'm not really confident that we can use this to differentiate, but what we could maybe use is just the visual aid of moving the probe to anatomical features in the muscle, as on the person is so to say. So, to conclude, we just need to figure out the most accurate option of replacing the participant part. We need to test the same stuff in high density, and ultimately, we need to actually analyze muscle architecture and motor unit properties to see if in the long term we can get any benefit out of it. And I want to use my last minute to advertise a different project. So for those of you that use ultrasonography, we have been developing an openly available ultrasound database for everybody to use with operator training guidelines and imaging procedures. But specifically, I want to highlight a community challenge that we are able to host within the next year. So we have 3,000 francs of prize money available for the development of the best image analysis algorithm. So for those of you that like to program and do image analysis, keep an eye out for that. We will be providing more information on the challenge in the future. We are now at the end of the presentations. If you have any questions or discussion points, feel free to ask.
Well done. You know, Switzerland, there is the challenge with money. Italy, there is the challenge with a glass of beer, nothing more. A glass of wine, actually, sir.
Thank you, really interesting. I'm trying to get my head around it. So to me, there is a shift between probe placement to marker placement. Okay, you said, well, there is human error also in marker placement, motion capture marker placement. So I understand you tried a probe. Have you tried multiple probe? Have you tried multiple anatomies in a probe? Because I think that's crucial.
I'm not sure about what you mean by anatomy of the probe.
The probe, sorry, or the phantom. I'm so sorry.
With the phantom data was just a proof of concept in the end, but I agree. It could be helpful. But what I meant by placing the markers is like we don't replace the markers, we just replace our 3D printed parts. So for example, for the participant part, the markers stay rigidly on there, because then you can re-import the geometry and do not need to redefine everything. And then on there we have some certain sanitization measures, like I said, a compass to kind of keep the rotation the same and the bubble level that kind of keeps the tilt the same, so we can sanitize this. But still, when we place the participant part, even though we try to be as accurate as possible, it can vary in, just say, translation from here to maybe here. And this is still the thing that we have to find a way to standardize. And if this works, then we can keep our reference coordinate system the same, and then this would be even better for the outcome, if that answers your question.
Hi, Paul. We know each other since a while. Just more curiosity. So the second part that I use this feature matching just based on the image.
Yeah.
We know muscles also among people are really different, and regional maybe can be also similar. Also just by tilting the probe I can probably, how can I say, cheat a bit.
Yes.
Or what if there is actually a change, maybe a massive muscle drop,
Yes.
for training or low gravity, as we talk quite a bit, and your feature of course will be, score will be really low, but
Yes.
that doesn't mean it's a bad location. So
Exactly. Which is why I said that we maybe should not consider the score, but just the anatomy to get a rough picture. But you would have the same issue as you pointed out before with the markers, right? If you place the markings on the muscle and you have hypertrophy, this is the same. With the optical tracking, at least we can see how much it differs from time point 1 to time point 2, and ideally it just is a translation of what we see an increase in muscle thickness. So we could account for that.
Thanks, Paul. Just as a proof of concept, I was wondering if you could just have a water bath that doesn't move, the transducer that doesn't move, and then the only variability is where the person sits in that bath, and you could then see what the error is. And if that's okay, then you can of course go further with the other sources of variability.
So rather than placing the participant registration part, placing the reference outside of the, yeah, that we could try. Thanks.
Perfect. So, we are ready for the coffee break, and since for my fault we are 5 minutes late, the coffee break will be 5 minutes longer. So we will be here back.